This all does sound fairly in line with what the regulation actually says. And honestly, there's a lot of media coverage about this. It was a big push by the White House to get this implemented, but it doesn't really seem to change the status quo all that much because, like you mentioned there, they raided Polymer 80 before this rule went into effect, gave them the cease and desist over these kits. And all the regulation appears to do, at least when you read through it, and I'm not a lawyer, right? So it's not legal advice to any gun makers out there, but all it appears to do is say that the kits, when you pair the 80% lower, the precursor part with the jig and the tools required to finish it in a kit, that becomes the same thing as a firearm in the eyes of the ATF. And now,
it all revolves around this phrase readily convertible. And it's obviously a very subjective phrase, and we're going to have some court cases and some precedents set on what quote unquote readily convertible means. The only real reference they have right now that they throw out there is this 2017 court case, which talks about like 8 days worth of work with $60,000 worth of machinery prevents something from being considered readily convertible. But obviously there's a lower bar, and that bar has yet to be firmly established. But again, I'm proud to see the community moving forward with gun building, and I have no doubt that unfortunately there's going to be some court cases before this is settled.
Yeah, I mean, I think the new definition of firearm that the ATF has come up with and is now part of the federal rulemaking through the rulemaking process is now finalized, is extremely expansive and could be interpreted in any number of ways. However, what the ATF says they're going to do, what they claim their interpretation is going to be of this expansive definition, at least for now, and that's, I guess, one of the bigger dangers is like you're giving this agency a lot more power, even though they're saying right now they only want to use it in this limited way. They could always change their mind on that down the line, but the way they say they're going to enforce it is very similar to how they were already enforcing federal law on.
It is. I don't want to be too. I don't want people to think that like I'm okay with this, but I do want to acknowledge, sure. Yeah, for sure, this isn't a big impact, but it is one more incremental step. In other words, before they said SS80, no, you can't put these together. Polymer 80, you can't put all this together, but you can put some of it together. Now they're saying, we'll let you know, but we think things going together is bad in the same package, sure. Or at the same store. Or even they're talking about like this idea that if you and I colluded to start a business where you were going to sell the jigs and I was going to sell the frames, they would consider us constructing or conspiring to commit a crime. And that would be a problem too. So there's still a lot more to be worked out on all of this. For example, you wouldn't have Polymer 80 would probably be in violation if you went to their website and said, when you ordered the thing, if they also sent you a link in your receipt, your email receipt, oh, you ordered the thing, let us send you a link to download the jig file from some other website. I think the ATF might take action against that. So people, here's the thing. I'm all for civil disobedience. If you want to, take your unregistered SBR and put your hands up and wear it, across your chest to the state capitol and say, arrest me, I think the NFA should be taken down and I want to fight it in court. Have your civil disobedience. What I don't want to see is people sort of innocently making the mistake because they assume, oh, nobody's enforcing anything. I'm just going to take my old jig and I'm going to get my buddy a precursor for Christmas. And I'm going to put them together and I'm going to send them through the mail to another state. You could be violating state and federal law by sending what the federal government now considers a firearm. For example, I live in Florida and Colorado, right? In Denver, the city and county of Denver, I can't have unserialized guns anymore. I can't participate in gun making. So one has to wonder, would the city attorney's office was very clear 8 months ago when that law went into effect that we could still have the kits. We just couldn't complete them in the city or county of Denver. So now I have to wonder, since the federal government apparently considers these two things together a firearm, if I had these two things together at my place in Denver, would the city of Denver come in and say, well, now you've got a firearm, even though you haven't done the work, because the federal government considers it a firearm. It's an unserialized gun, and we're going to charge you with a city violation. So that's obviously people have to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think you're making a very good point here, which is while the sort of practical effect of stopping people from making guns is not fully there with this new regulation. There are a number of new questions that are raised, and this sort of codifies the direction that the ATF was already going in. But now, instead of just extrapolating from how what they said when they rated Polymer 80 a few years ago, now we have in as a federal rule, that's formalized, and so it is significant, but it's not. I guess my main point is just that it's not going to have the effect that the president or much of the media has sort of hoped.
Well, let's be honest. This is par for the course for the summer of 2022, because I keep hearing about this sweeping bipartisan gun legislation that was signed earlier in the year. And when you look at that actual law, and again, I don't want to be misquoted in the gun community, as you know, sometimes happens. I'm not in favor of some of the things that were done, particularly in terms of encouraging the red flag laws in that earlier legislation. But that's not sweeping gun control. 97% of that bill has literally nothing to do with gun control. It's school safety. It also includes programs that will help the gun community in terms of mental health, proactive mental health care, and things like that. Tying that to red flag laws is a problem, and encouraging states to have red flag laws that are unfair and just essentially de facto gun control. That's not a good idea, and I don't like that part of that legislation. But most of what was really gun control, like controlling the minimum age to buy guns and things like that, was removed from that bill before it was passed. The only thing now that's age related in that earlier bill that was signed is the issue that juvenile criminal records can now be used as part of a background check for young adults that want to buy guns. And quite frankly, I don't think there should be a difference between a 16-year-old who murders somebody and a 19-year-old that murders somebody. If they're involved in criminal activity and they're willfully and knowingly killing people and they get arrested and charged for that, I don't think magically at 18 that person's record should be expunged. I do understand the idea of restoration of rights, obviously, and I'm in favor of considering that maybe it's not once a felon, always a felon, and how we work that out in our society. But at the end of the day, again, the military, or the military law enforcement way of doing things, like all or nothing and thinking about things in black and white, might be a great way to envision ideology. But what we really have in the practical world is the media is saying sweeping gun legislation was passed earlier this year, and that's just simply not true. And that's not to dismiss the intention or the desire of the Biden administration to put sweeping gun legislation into play. But they just haven't done it, either with the earlier law, or looks like with the assault weapons ban that won't get passed in the Senate, or with these rule changes at the ATF.